Welcome back to the Coaching Masters podcast. I love doing that. We are now diving into this week's podcast episode, and we're talking about something very, very interesting, something called archetypes. What is an archetype? What are archetypes? Why are they important to us? Why are they important for our lives in general? How do we use them? How do we learn from them? How can we give them to our coaching clients? How do they have a dramatic effect on our life, even when we don't quite realize that this thing has a dramatic effect on our life? It does, but how does it have a dramatic effect on our life? So essentially an archetype, what an archetype is an archetype is a universal pattern that we run, right, throughout our lives that allow us to play characters. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, when I say a universal pattern, I'm talking about it's like an energy, right? Patterns, habits, energies, these things that we do on a daily basis, these things that we exhibit, that we show, that we feel, that we step into. They're very, very, very important, okay? Now, daily habits we know are very important, and there is a particular energy that is paired with daily habits. It's the energy of repetition, doing something enough times that it just becomes second nature. There is an energy that is linked to archetypes, that being the characters that we play on a daily basis, dependent on what situation we find ourselves in. Now, there's one thing that I really want to highlight here because it's very, very, very important. When I say play a character, there is absolutely nothing disingenuous about that, right? It's all 100% natural. When I say us stepping into a character, playing a character, becoming a different version of ourselves, becoming a different person, it's all 100% part of the human experience. There's nothing false about it. There's nothing fake about it. There's nothing plastic about it. There's nothing disingenuous about it. It is part of the natural human experience. So for instance, when you are a completely different version of you with your friends than you are with your family, that is 100% still genuine, authentically you. It's just that it's you in a different set of circumstances, and therefore it's you, a different version of you that you need to bring to that situation, okay? I really must highlight that first before we dive in, because that can be a huge misconception when it comes to working with archetypes. People feel as though, because if you think about it, right, how much in today's day and age do we hear the idea of people wearing masks? Is this something that you've heard? And you hear it often, and you may have heard it multiple times, and you hear it time and time again, that within this realm of social media, this online world, 2021, the digital revolution, it's very easy for people to wear masks, right? We've heard this. We hear this all the time. It's very easy for people to wear masks. Now, the premise of that essentially comes from when somebody is feeling one way, but they show the world something different. Maybe they are feeling pain, but what they're showing the world is enjoyment and success and excitement, right? That is completely different to what we're talking about today, okay? What we're talking about today isn't about putting on a mask, a false mask, to show people an external reality that is not in alignment with your internal reality. That is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is stepping into the different versions of us that already exist. They're 100% real, they're 100% genuine, and some situations just require a different version of us. And it's as simple as that. This is not about hiding behind a false version of you. This is 100% about you embracing a different version of you because the situation requires that different version of you. That the version of you that exists when you are with your partner is completely different to the version of you that exists when you're at work, right? When you're at work, the version of you that exists there is completely different to the version of you that exists when you're with your best friends, right? Now, when you're with your best friends, right, multiple people, that version of you is slightly different to the version of you than when you're with your best friend and it's just the two of you, that person who is the number one person in this world that understands you and listens to you and knows every single one of your deepest, darkest secrets. Also, you're a different version of you with your best friend than you are when you're completely alone. These are archetypes, okay? These are versions of us that exist, that need to be exercised and appreciated and loved and utilized. Now, what I'm going to be doing today is I'm actually going to be talking to you about 12 different archetypes. For everybody that's on our NLP master course at the Coaching Masters, you will know if you've done the course or if you're on the course leading up to it, get excited, because there is an entire week dedicated to archetypes. And what we do is we focus on 6 of the most effective, core, powerful archetypes that we can step into and our clients can step into in order to positively affect their life and in order to bring a solid version of themselves to any one particular situation. So let me just talk through the 12 archetypes, right? Now, what I'm going to do is normally we give these archetypes a character, but what I'm going to do is they will have a name, but I'm going to give you more of a sense of who they are. And I'm going to give you a sense of what it is they want and what it is they desire. Now, undoubtedly, what will happen, is you will be able to recognize all 12 of these archetypes inside of you. Now, some of them will be more prevalent than others. Some of them will be more present than others. Some of them will show their face and rear their head way more than others. But it does not mean that you do not feel each and every one of them, even if you only feel some of them on a very, very small level, on what we would consider to be a very transparent level. You know, it's a bit diluted, it's a bit weak. That one version of yourself doesn't tend to come out very often. And some of them, you will see them daily. But it does not mean you are without any of them. The chances are you're going to have experienced all 12 of these at some point throughout your life. And the chances are, in reality, you experience all 12 of these throughout the week, but you just might not notice it. So the first one that I want to talk to you about is known as innocent. This is the innocent archetype. We all have an innocent archetype inside of us. The strongest amongst us, the bravest amongst us, we still have an innocent archetype. Now, the innocent archetype desires safety. Now, the most rebellious amongst us, the most adventurous amongst us, the people that will value adventure above all else and love jumping out of airplanes and traveling across the world, there will still be an element of safety that person wants and desires. It may not be one of their top 5 core values, i.e., it may not be one of the things that they value the most in this world. However, it will still, on some level, be something that they desire, because we all inside of us have a sense of innocence. And that innocence, that innocent archetype, loves safety. When you bring a different version of you to a situation, you are not being you. You're still being you, but you're bringing a different version. Now, when you understand archetypes, what you can do is you can decide what version you're going to bring. And that is very, 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 very significant, because what often happens is that we wait to see what version of ourselves is brought to the situation. We hope that we're going to step into the situation feeling how we want to feel and embracing the situation in the way that we want to embrace it and expressing our values in the way that we want to express them. But if we do that, it's almost like, you know, it's like a gamble, isn't it? You know, those game shows where you spin a wheel and you just hope that it falls on that one bracket. It's like that. It's a total gamble. So what we want to do is we want to be deciding, right? We want to be deciding what it is we bring to a situation. Now, it's interesting. Carol in the comments says, I don't really identify with the innocent. And that will happen, right? That will happen. There will be some of these that you strongly identify with and some of them that you don't identify with very much at all. However, there is a little bit of all of them inside us. There will be elements in our life where if, say we take the innocent as an example, there will be times in our life where if our safety is compromised or questioned or put at risk, and it's a particular area of our life that we value safety. Let's say, for instance, we value the safety of our children, right? Now, that innocent archetype really comes to the forefront when the safety of our children are compromised. Other archetypes come to the forefront as well. Let's make no mistake about it. You know, the archetypes that need some protection, that some aggression, big mama needs to step in to make sure her kids are okay. But there's also that innocent archetype that desires and values safety. And what we want is the end result, which is safety, to make sure everybody's okay. We may not relate to it. And a lot of these, we won't relate to them strongly, but there's at least a piece of them inside of us. And it's context dependent, completely context dependent and situation dependent. The empowering thing about knowing that there's a little piece of all of them inside of us means that even if it's one we can't relate to heavily, what we can do is we can decide to bring it to the forefront if that archetype is needed. We might not be able to relate to it. They might not show their face very often, but if an archetype is needed, we can choose to bring it to the forefront because we know it exists. We know it's a part of us. We just need to go down there, pick it up and drag it up, right? We can't do that if we don't know that archetypes exist. We can't do that if we don't have this level of knowledge where we know what archetypes exist within us. We can't bring it to the forefront. We can't allow it to raise its head. We can't step into it because we don't know it exists. But after this podcast episode, you're all going to know about the 12 and the fact that they exist, and so that you can make a decision what you have to do to bring it to the forefront. So anyway, we all have a little bit of an innocent archetype. Sometimes people have it a lot more than others. Sometimes people have it way more than others, and it's actually their primary archetype. So the innocent archetype wants safety. That's what they want. They want safety. They want to be safe. They want their friends and family to be safe. They want safety and security inside of their home. They want safety and security in terms of what they do on a daily basis. They want safety. Then there is an archetype that we do talk about on the NLP Master Course, known as the Sage, S-A-G-E, Sage. Now, a sage is very, very wise. A sage is very, very knowledgeable. Think of an old wizard, long white beard, sitting in a library, studying forever and just getting their brain so full of information, because what they want is knowledge. And that is the number one thing, the number one value that a sage has is knowledge. They want knowledge. Is that important to you? Is that valuable to you? Is that something that you hold dear? Now, interestingly enough, within the coaching masters, I can imagine that knowledge probably is something that most people would at least value on some level, because what are you doing? You have a pursuit of knowledge. Right? You're on a pursuit of knowledge. If you weren't pursuing knowledge, you wouldn't be in this group. You wouldn't be part of the coaching masters, coaching mastery. You wouldn't be listening to podcast episodes. You wouldn't be watching lives, because we're on a pursuit of knowledge. That's why we engage in content such as this. That is your sage archetype coming to the forefront and saying, let's learn more. Let's gather more information. Let's increase our knowledge, increase our wisdom, because it's all part of this journey which we're on together. Then there is the explorer. Now, interestingly enough, if somebody relates very, very heavily to the explorer, now this is a generalization, okay, but there can be a correlation between the two. If somebody relates very heavily to the explorer, whose number one value is freedom, by the way, and of course, I know through spending a lot of time with people within the coaching masters and the coaching space in general, and people within coaching mastery, and also having asked a lot of questions to our community, I know that freedom is something that a lot of people within this community highly, highly value, right? Freedom is a value that a lot of people hold dear. The misconception and generalization, which I say misconception, you know, there is some truth to this. But I buck the trend here, and I'm going to tell you about this in a moment. But people would say if you're an explorer archetype primarily and you value freedom, then you're probably a lot less of an innocent archetype where you value safety, because they're opposites, right? And that's the thing that people will mostly go to. You either want lots and lots of freedom or you want safety. Now, the reason why I buck that trend is I highly, highly value both of those things to the point where I value them, I would say, genuinely, and I have to think about this to make sure this is 100% accurate, I value them equally. Now, that's an interesting thing. A lot of people would probably assume that I would value freedom way more than safety. You know, whenever I do core value tests, freedom is always like one of those number one top 5 core values that I have. And safety tends to, it's interesting. Safety, does that always make it onto the list? I'm not sure. But the more I think about it now, I value freedom and safety equally. So I buck the trend in terms of you either have to be an explorer archetype or an innocent archetype, because I love freedom. I love freedom to be able to go where I want to go, do what I want to do, see the people who I want to see, speak to who I want to speak to, dress how I want to dress, travel the world, have adventures, and express everything that life has to offer. And at the same time, I like to know that the things I have built are secure. I like to know that the people I love are safe. I like to know that if need be, I'm looked after. I like to climb the ladder of life, and I don't like the idea of falling down any pegs. I like to create that almost who wants to be a millionaire-esque line where it's now you can't fall below this line. I like safety. I do. I like safety and security. I like safety and security even more so now that I have a family. That's definitely for sure, because I want safety and security for that family, for my family. And at the same time, I love freedom. I express that archetype, that explorer archetype greatly on a daily basis. So the reason why I'm telling you that from a personal point of view is I just want to buck the trend and crush the misconception that you can only have one or the other, right? You can only either be full of freedom or full of safety. It's not true. It's not true. You can definitely have both. So we've looked at the innocent archetype who values safety, the sage archetype who values knowledge, the explorer archetype who values freedom. And then there is the outlaw. Now, the outlaw is a very, very, very interesting archetype. The outlaw values liberation. Liberation. Now, I heavily relate to the outlaw. The liberation of those being oppressed. There is something that I live by, and that is that expression crushes repression every single fucking time. As human beings, we are not designed to be repressed, compressed. We are designed to express. So think about this for a moment. Let's imagine that you have a tire, and that tire needs to be pumped up with air. It needs to be expressed in order for it to feel alive and to do what it needs to do to be most effective. And if we compressed that tire, if we depressed it, if we repressed it, what is going to happen is that it will deflate, it will crush, it will be useless, it will be sad, it will die. Humans are tires. We are tires, right? It's a strange comparison, I know, but we are tires. We need to express. We need to be able to express ourselves. And in the face of repression, that is where we will have riots and wars, because there is something inside of the human mind that does not in any way like to be repressed. The outlaw archetype is where you really feel very strongly that what you value is liberation, to stop the oppression of others, right? So this is a very, very, very interesting one, because when you express your outlaw archetype, you need to put your innocent archetype to the back for a moment. Your safety will often be questioned, direct line of attack even, when your outlaw archetype is being expressed, because you're fighting for something that you believe in. And that doesn't necessarily mean actual fighting. That could be fighting with your words, with your knowledge, with your statements. But a lot of the time, most of the time, at least once or twice or a handful of times, whenever it's completely, you can't put a time frame on it. It covers all bases, depending on the individual. There will be a sense of liberation that you want to create in your life or for other people at some point throughout your existence. And when that happens, the outlaw archetype comes to the forefront. Then there is the magician. The magician archetype values power. They want power. Now, power is a very, very interesting word, because there are a lot of negative connotations and misconceptions around the word power. But power itself is neither good or bad. It's what you choose to do with power. that will determine whether or not the result of that power has a positive effect or a negative effect on others, right? So power is a very, very interesting word. When I say power, I could say the word power to 100 different people and they will have 100 different viewpoints on what the word power means to them. Some of them, it will mean repression. Some of them, it will mean expression. Some of them, it will mean safety. Some of them, it will mean rescue. Some of them, it will mean harshness. Who knows, right? Everybody will have a different internal representation of what power is. But the archetype of the magician wants and values power. Now, even if this is something that you really feel that you cannot relate to in any way, there will at least be a droplet of the magician inside of you. There will be situations where you are able to bring your magician to the fore, to the front of who you are, how you walk, how you talk, how you behave. Because let's say, for instance, you were in a situation where a loved one, where they were at risk, they were at threat, and they needed you to help them. To be able to develop a sense of power in a situation like that is going to be able to help you and assist you on your pursuit to help somebody that you love. And stepping into the magician archetype, the one who is resourceful, the one who isn't scared, the one who is happy to create and express their power to be able to help another person or leave their mark on the world in a positive way. We all have it within us to step into the archetype of the magician. We all have it in us to express and find our power when we need to. That is the main overarching message of today's podcast as we go through archetypes. The main message is that we have it within us to step into any one of these archetypes. If we want to or if we need to, we can do it. It doesn't matter if we can't relate to them on a daily basis. We have the ability to make a decision, and that decision is to choose to become one of these archetypes in any one particular scenario. And it really is as simple as knowing what the archetype is, what they highly value, and deciding that that is who you are going to be in that moment. People that don't know about archetypes, they don't know what the archetypes are, they don't know what the archetypes value, they are constantly gambling. They're gambling and hoping that the archetype that they need is the one that is going to show up. And that is something that I want to give to everybody today. I want to give everybody the gift of no longer gambling with it, no longer hoping that when you step into that room or you go and speak to that person or you enter that situation, you no longer hope that you are going to be and feel and look and walk and talk how you want to. You're going to decide, this is the archetype I'm bringing to that situation. I'm entering that room and I'm deciding that I'm stepping into the outlaw and I'm going to fight for liberation. I'm deciding that I'm stepping into the magician and I'm going to express my power. I'm deciding that I'm going to be the explorer today and I'm going to express my freedom. This is really seriously powerful stuff, because when you realize that each and every one of these archetypes lives inside of you and you have the ability to step into them, you no longer hope that they show their face. You step into it. You make the decision. There is then the hero archetype. The hero. The hero is a very interesting one. The hero values mastery. Now think about the name of this group. Coaching Mastery for Online Coaches. What we are achieving in this group, and for those few people that watch this live, and I love and respect each and every one of you, for everybody that's watching this live right now, and for everybody that watches the replay, and everybody that listens to this podcast episode, this is a large group, and it's actually a small number of you that watch the lives and listen to the podcast episodes and engage in the content, right? So well done, first and foremost, well done, because what you're doing is you're on a journey of mastery, achieving coaching mastery. Every single podcast episode, I'm handing over tools, techniques, methods, ideas that you can use with your clients on yourself to achieve coaching mastery every single week. So what you're doing is you're stepping into the archetype of the hero, and you're saying, and you're making a statement by saying, what I want to achieve here is mastery. Every time you enter this group and you watch a live, you watch a power hour, you listen to a podcast episode, you're saying, I want to achieve mastery. That's you stepping into your hero archetype. That's that, right? And you're also stepping into your sage because you're saying, I want knowledge, right? So I'm willing to become the sage. I'm willing to open up. I'm willing to be a student. And in doing so, I'm then going to master this topic and I'm going to step into the hero and I'm going to become a coaching master. Heroes strive and value mastery. They strive for mastery. Then there is the lover. We're halfway through Are Archetypes. I'm telling you about 12 today. And what I would like you to do is I would like each and every one of you to listen to this podcast episode again, grab a pen and paper, write down the names, write down what they value, and think about situations in your life currently where you would like to be any one of these. Maybe you think about your relationship and you pick an archetype you would like to bring to that relationship. Maybe you think about your coaching business and you pick an archetype you'd like to bring to your coaching sessions. Maybe think about relationship with your kids and you pick an archetype that you bring to that relationship with your kids. Maybe it's when you're spending time with friends and you choose an archetype and you bring that archetype to the situation. This is true empowerment. When you really master archetypes, this is true empowerment. So anyway, there's the lover archetype. And the lover values intimacy. Intimacy. Now, this is really, really, really important because how often do we find ourselves with our partners where actually we know deep down that what we would like to give and to show is intimacy? And there just feels like there's something standing in our way and we don't quite know what it is. Why is it that I'm not able to show intimacy or give intimacy to this person who I love? And I want them to feel it. I want them to know it. I want them to experience it. The thing that's standing in your way is another archetype. Except up until this point, we just didn't have the knowledge or the awareness of that. What's standing in your way is that another archetype is being brought to the situation, but we just didn't know it. That is one of the most powerful elements of studying archetypes, is that we now get to decide. We now get to recognize that archetype I'm bringing to this relationship, that's not working. So I need to bring this one instead. And how do I do that? I decide that I'm going to. It's as simple as that. Never ever underestimate the power of a human decision. How am I going to bring a different archetype to this situation? I'm going to decide that I'm bringing a different archetype to this situation and I'm stepping into it. Decision, action, decision, action, decision, action. The twin pillars of life change, decision and action. Then there is the jester. This is a very interesting archetype because the jester values pleasure. The jester does not like to take things too seriously. The jester likes to joke. The jester likes to play. The jester holds pleasure above everything else. They hold that value above everything else. Now, I can make a pretty solid educated guess and say that at least on some level, we all are able to step into the jester every so often when what we want to create is a sense of pleasure and a sense of play and a sense of fun. That really is deep down inside of us, that archetype. That comes from childhood. That comes from that moment in our life where we were able to be free and to play. Now, the jester is a very important one because the jester gets repressed. Repressed the jester. That's what happens all the time. But we do not want to be repressing the jester. We don't want that. We want to be expressing the jester. We want to be allowing ourselves to feel a sense of fun and feel a sense of pleasure and feel a sense of play throughout so many different areas of our life. Because if we can bring fun and play and pleasure into different areas of our life, we're a lot more likely to engage in those areas and succeed within those areas. So the jester really does deserve to be expressed. Then there is the everyman / every woman. Every man, every woman, right? Traditionally, it's called the everyman. But of course, only covers one sex. What's the point of that? It's the everyman and every woman. Now, the everyman / every woman, let's call them the every. The everyman, the every woman, let's call them the every, wants belonging. Belonging. So key to want belonging. Inclusion. And why do we want that? Even for those amongst us that dare to dream to be famous and heard and stand on a stage in front of tens of thousands of people, there will always still be a sense of belonging that we need. If anything, a lot of the time that desire for fame and for recognition comes from a sense of belonging and wanting to be part of something. That comes from a very, very deep, ancient part of our brain called the amygdala. The amygdala. The amygdala is responsible for fear inside of our brain. Now, why does the everyman / every woman who wants belonging, why does that relate to the amygdala, the part of our brain that is responsible for fear? That's because a very long time ago, as we were evolving as a species, as we were evolving into Homo sapiens, we needed belonging and inclusion in order to stay alive. We needed it. If we ventured too far away from the crowd, we were out on our own in the elements. If we ventured too far away from the huddle, the tribe, the collective, the inclusion, then what would happen is we would be out there and we would probably either freeze to death or would be eaten by some big horrible creature. So the amygdala, which keeps us safe, what it does is it kicks in and goes into overdrive if we ever feel as though we're standing out from the crowd. Now, why is that problematic? It's problematic in today's day and age because in order to be able to build, say for instance, a successful coaching business and build a successful personal brand, we must stand out from the crowd. We must be seen. We must be heard. Think about the nature of what I'm doing right now. I'm just doing a Facebook Live, but the nature of that is almost like a soapbox situation. I'm standing up in front of a crowd, in front of an audience and saying, this is what I know. This is what wisdom I've gathered. Let me give it to you. And this is what I think. That in itself is standing out from the crowd. Now, in any way, shape or form, am I worried or concerned about being midway through this live and all of a sudden someone jumps on and starts throwing a lot of hate at me? Not at all. I couldn't care less for a few different reasons. One, I know that I've built an incredible community here and therefore it's very, very unlikely to happen. Two, absolutely tremendous marketing isn't about attracting your ideal client. It's about repelling the people that you don't want to work with. So that means that I would have been successful in that mission. And three, it also means that I'm speaking my truth and I'm saying something that's worthwhile because it means it's not vanilla, right? It means it's not just trying to please everybody. I'm saying something and I'm speaking about something that I truly believe in. So anyway, even having said that, there is a sense, right? There is a sense, of course, that we need belonging because there's that amygdala, there's that part of the brain that doesn't want us to venture too far away from the crowd. And the everyman / every woman does value that. So in this world, that's one that really is a strange one because of the constantly updating digital world that we find ourselves in, where things like personal branding is very, very important. But it's still an archetype that we can step into when we need to, right? When we need to. And we can express that value of belonging when we need to. And sometimes there is a need for that. Just know you have the ability to express it and step into it whenever you want. Then there is the caregiver. Okay, the caregiver. Archetype number 10, the caregiver. The caregiver values service. Now, I can imagine that this is something that a lot of people within Coaching Mastery would value because as we know, as coaches, the more value we add to somebody's life, the more money we make, right? We want to make money. We want to be successful because we want to be able to build the life that we want. But we also understand that can only come through genuinely adding value to people's lives and therefore being somewhat of a caregiver, offering service. Service is a very, very important part of the human experience because even for the most driven, determined, focused amongst us who are ready to do anything to build the life that we want, Service is actually a huge part of that. It's a gigantic part of that because it's very, very difficult to build a successful life, build a successful business, to be able to build a successful existence in general if there is not a huge element of service. And the reason for that is because we live in a world, a society made up of other people. And as long as we live in this society made up of other people, service, of course, is going to be something that's very, very important because it is the way that we're able to contribute to the greater good, to the bigger picture, to society. It has to come in the form of some form of service. You also pair that with the fact that that is also the only way of being able to build a genuinely long-lasting, fulfilling business, because your business must serve others in a very valuable way, that we all have a bit of the caregiver inside of us, at least. And we can bring the caregiver to the forefront whenever we want. And I recommend you bring a huge element of that caregiver to the forefront of your businesses, because your businesses will thrive if they are built upon a foundation of adding value to other people's lives above everything else. That's very important. There is then the ruler who values control. Now, this is a really interesting one because we thought power had negative connotations. My word, what about control? Geez, that's got some negative connotations, hasn't it? I say the word control to a group of people, and not only will they all have a different internal representation of what control means, i.e. their own representation of what control means. For some people, it will be utterly positive. For some people, it will be utterly negative, and everything else in between. We can really go to the ends of the spectrum with a word such as control. And there are a lot of people amongst us which may outwardly, overtly say, no, I do not in any way relate to the ruler. I do not like control. I do not agree with control. I do not want anything to do with control. But once again, it's situational and context dependent. Let's go back to that example of a loved one in danger or a child in danger. Then being the ruler of that situation and being able to control the situation so that the outcome is a positive one, to be able to provide that level of structure to a situation so that the outcome is a positive one where everybody's okay, everybody's safe, and everyone's okay, everyone's all right. That's a different story altogether, right? Now, even for those amongst us that have experienced the negative end of control, which I have, I've experienced the negative end of control, and I can really fully understand as to why people will have very negative connotations around the word control. But again, let's think about the context. Let's think about the situation. There will be times in your life where bringing the ruler to the forefront of who you are in that moment, to be able to control the situation, to be able to even control the people within the situation in order to create a positive outcome. There will always be times where that is useful. There will always be times where that is useful. There are times in our life where we allow another part of us, a more detrimental part of our nature, to control us. And therefore, what happens is we experience results that we do not want, that we do not like, that do not serve us. If we are exhibiting behavior that doesn't serve us, if we're saying things that don't serve us, if we're going to places that don't serve us, if we're spending time with people or we're in relationships that don't serve us, then what do we need? We need to step into the ruler archetype and start gaining some control over ourselves and our own life. So even though that one word can have some negative connotations, one thing that I would truly recommend is that you do not avoid that one. Step into that one, dance with that one, allow that archetype to become your friend. Really, really, really express it as much as you can, because being able to control yourself, to control a situation in order to guide it towards a positive outcome for everyone involved is a good thing. Okay, it's a good thing. Finally, last but certainly not least. Now, bearing in mind, I've not gone through these archetypes in any kind of order. There isn't an order, right? There's no level of importance. There's no hierarchy, right? There is no hierarchy. So you decide. You decide the hierarchy to you, right? Because there will be some of these values that you value more than others. But just please, please, please know that you can be all of them when the time requires it. The final one is the artist. The artist. Now, this is really interesting. The artist values innovation, creation, something new. We all have the artist inside of us. Even if we have been led to believe and therefore have developed limiting beliefs around, I'm not artistic, I'm not an artist, I'm not creative, I'm not inventive. Limiting beliefs. You, by your very nature, are creative. Innovation is so key to the human experience. And you are really expressing your value of innovation every time you have an idea. Just an idea. You don't need to be able to go and paint like Picasso. You don't need to be able to go and create a statue like the Statue of David. You don't need to be able to be that sort of artist externally that creates these what we consider to be works of art in the modern world or even in the historical world. You express your artist archetype every time you have a new idea, every time you have a light bulb moment, every time you have an aha moment. You're expressing the archetype of the artist. Express that archetype and step into that archetype and let he or she really take over when you find yourself stuck. When you find yourself stuck, the artist is a very good archetype to express. The artist is a very good archetype to let loose, let them play, let them express, let them dance, let them think, let them come up with ideas because they are there to help you. Don't allow yourself to be fooled and convinced that you have no innovation, you're not creative, you're not an artist. By your very nature, you are. So those are 12 very key archetypes that you can choose to be daily. You can be the innocent archetype who values safety. You can be the sage who values knowledge. You can be the explorer who values freedom. You can be the outlaw who values liberation. You can be the magician who values power. You can be the hero who values mastery. You can be the lover who values intimacy. You can be the jester who values pleasure. You can be the everyman/everywoman who values belonging. You can be the caregiver who values service. You can be the ruler who values control. And you can be the artist who values innovation. You have it within you to be every single one of those archetypes. And you know what? You are every single one of those. They all live inside of you. They all exist. They all are you. They are you in a situation and context dependent place and time. They are you, except up until the point of learning what they are and how they operate and who they are, we hope that we're going to experience the one we need. We hope and we wish and we pray. Now, what I want to be able to empower you to do is to step away from that world of hope and step into the world of decision and action. I'm not going to hope for the explorer to arrive so I can express my freedom. I'm going to decide that I am the explorer today and I'm going to express my freedom. A loved one's in danger. I'm not going to hope that the ruler arrives so I can gain some control over this situation. I'm going to decide that I'm the ruler and I'm going to control the situation to create a positive outcome for those involved. When I'm feeling stuck and I'm trying to progress my business and I'm feeling cloggy and cloudy, I'm not going to hope that the artist arrives so I can have some innovation, some ideas. I'm going to decide that I am the artist and I'm going to create those ideas and innovation. You see my point, right? You see my point. So every person listening to this and watching this, don't hope that these 12 will arrive. Look at the situation, decide what the situation needs for the most positive outcome, and you decide which one you're going to step into in order to enter that situation as the archetype. I love you all. You're amazing. You're powerful. You're valid. You're full of archetypes. You're full of values. You're full of empowerment. You can do anything that you want. Go on this journey. I really do recommend you go on this journey of archetypes. It's going to be one of the most empowering things you've ever done. Love you all so much. Keep expressing those archetypes. Keep moving forward. and I will speak to you very, very soon.